Hey everyone, welcome back to Lens Flare,
Welcome, welcome.
where we talk about basically everything behind the camera, in front of the camera, and in particular, talking about the things to help you overcome problems before they become problems or deal with problems because they were problems.
Lots of problems.
So in this episode, what are we talking about?
We are talking about TFP. So, what exactly is TFP?
So the exact meaning can vary based off the community and the person you're talking to, and you absolutely want to be clear. Also, sometimes it's not called TFP. So what we're talking about is trade. Sometimes it's trade for photos. To be fair, a lot of times, especially now in the TikTok and OnlyFans age, a lot of times it's actually trade for video. But the important concept is that generally neither side is getting paid. And instead, you guys are working together collaboratively because some of you like what the other people do. Some of the other people like what you do or they do. And some of the people just are excited to be in front of a camera and they could care less anything else.
So, can you or who can benefit from trade for photos? Can they make money off of it?
So in the Facebook groups that I'm part of, there is often a big argument on whether or not people are allowed to make money off of TFP. A lot of people explicitly feel like if anybody's making any money, that it is ethically wrong. That basically, if you're a photographer and you're making money off of the images, then you should give some of that money to the other person. And vice versa, sometimes the photographers don't want the models to make money. The last thing that a photographer in these groups wants is they don't usually want the model to sell their photos to a magazine and, make $1,500 or something. I don't know. So, in my preference and the people that I work with, generally everybody is just expected to do whatever they want with it because it's trade. It's trade, people. So if the model I'm working with is publishing their images to OnlyFans and making a lot of money, and they make $10,000 that month off OnlyFans, and part of it is based off the content I give them, good for them. I don't expect them to pay me because I also have footage that it is up to me to try to sell. If that's what I want to do, then I can try to sell it. I don't need to get a cut of what they've sold it for. So the way that I do trade and the way that a lot of people do trade, it's literally we're working together, we're not paying each other, and whatever you share at the end is yours. You can do whatever you want with it.
Okay, so when is a good time to ask for trade for photos or offer trade for photos?
So when we talked about this before the podcast, what I was really thinking, I think differently than, for some reason, the tone you asked that makes me think that you're literally implying like who or when you should sneak up to them and be like, hey, you want to do trade?
Yeah, let's do some trade.
That's not what we're asking. We're not talking about that at all.
No?
No.
Oh,
How
darn.
you network is up to you. That's not this episode. I am not good at networking. So, I mean, I realize I have lots and lots of models that I work with to do trade. So maybe I'm better at networking than I think. But that is not this episode because I don't think I'm very good at all.
No?
No, I just think that people want to do things with me because I work really hard and I give them content really fast. So, no. When you should do TFP is generally at the beginning of your career. So in the beginning, as a model or a photographer, then you are obligated to either pay the other person or work for them to give them content that you hope they will use. And basically, because the other person is more experienced in the industry and more successful in the industry, that other person will be able to monetize what they're creating, and you probably won't if you're in the beginning of your career. Now, you may have to pay. There are scenarios where you pay them and you're giving them the content to do whatever they want. So that seems maybe unfair. But the reality is that if they, people trade with people at the same tier of their career. So people that are 5 years into their photography field and they have lots of magazines they've published and they have lots of followers, that person probably has a ton of people asking for photos. So if you want to guarantee their time, you may need to pay them. Likewise, if you're a beginner photographer and you have no followers and frankly, your content is unreliable. Sometimes it might be pretty good, and that's what made you get into photography. But sometimes it's not good. And I've definitely been there where I didn't know at the beginning of the shoot if I was going to have good photos at the end of the shoot. And in that scenario, the photographer will probably have to pay the model if they want a model that's already successful. Now, if you're a brand new model and you're a brand new photographer, you should work together and you should do trade because that's perfect. Like, right? That's why I say, like, you know,
The levels.
if you're at the same level, you trade for free. And if one of you is at higher tiers, you still may trade because they're nice people, or they may say, you know what, you can either wait for me to have an opening in my schedule, or you can pay me, and this is my rate.
Right.
So that's what I really mean by, you know, when should you ask for trade? You should be trying to do as much trade as possible at the beginning of your career. And as you slowly switch to either paid projects or projects where you want exclusive rights because you have the ability to monetize your content, that's where you start saying, hey, I don't want to trade because if you have my content and you're posting my content for free, then I can't sell it to anybody. And that's kind of a problem sometimes.
So, what are the other types of trade that you can do?
So, you know, you can do trade basically for portfolio, and that's what I think a lot of people think TFP is. It's just for portfolio. So they're saying, you know what, you're not allowed to make money, I'm not allowed to make money. Then there is what I prefer, which is just, hey, we're going to create content and we're going to both do whatever we can do with it. We're going to do our best to sell it, monetize it, whatever. And then there is split trade. And split trade is where I say, hey, we're going to create a lot of content and we're going to split it. So you have half the exclusive content and I have half the exclusive content. And in that scenario, the model can say, hey, I have my content up on Patreon or OnlyFans, you can only get it here. Meanwhile, the photographer also has content that they can post. And like obviously we have a Patreon. So when we do split trade, then I can tell people I'm the only source of this content. What I don't like sometimes about it is because it can feel somewhat unfair. Where what if some of the content is better? Who gets the good content?
That's where it gets a little dicey. Like, people will be like, oh, you have that one, but I have this one.
Okay. So what I generally try to do is I try to do I kind of try to do like a biblical, like, hey, I'm going to cut the cake and you choose which half you want. That's what I kind of prefer. But it becomes hard because if I don't see that model again in person, if I give them the content and they say, oh, well, I want this half and you can have that half, how do I know they didn't save all of it?
That's true.
Now, to a certain extent, they have to trust me too, because I had all of it. I had all the photos. I had all the video. They have to trust me that I'm later on not going to use the content I gave them for some other purpose. And that it does get weird, like BTS. Oh, that's BTS for the content I don't even have. But it's mine. We didn't make a deal for the BTS, like the camera recording me recording. So, yeah, that stuff starts getting really hard. And I think the sooner that you get to just paying for the content makes everybody's lives easier. Because when you pay for the model's time or you pay for the photographer's time, there is no question that the other person is not supposed to use that content. It's whoever paid.
I mean, the other thing about BTS is depending on what content we're doing, it protects us and the models.
Yeah, for sure. When you're working with, I was going to say like, obviously like nude or
Not
only
safe for work,
on
OnlyFans.
OnlyFans kind of stuff, then it definitely makes me feel safer as a male in this industry to know that I have a recording that says like this is how things went down. But I think there's a misnomer that it's somehow more risky when you're recording nudity than it is if you're recording, fashioning photos. If you are alone with another person in the room, then you have to worry that there will be a he said, or she said, she said, or he said, she said kind of scenario where one of the two people accuses the other person of something. And so having BTS recording of everything, fashion, anything, because honestly, if you're doing a fashion shoot and they say that you did something inappropriate, it's not really like any more provable or not provable, even if they were nude. If they're like, oh, they're a nude art model and they strip down to nothing and they're like, oh, he touched me inappropriately. She can say that whether she's wearing clothes or not, because nobody knows whether or not I did without. And luckily, but I mean, for me, that's never happened. I think I work with great models and I just don't think the models I've worked with would accuse me of something inappropriate. And I know that I try to behave in a very professional manner, even with my friends. So I just don't think it's going to happen to me, but I definitely appreciate having the BTS recording that in some cases I'm required. Like if I'm hired to record, sometimes I'm required to provide the BTS for legal reasons so that they know they didn't hire some deviant.
You deviant, you.
Well, I mean, hey, maybe I was planted on this earth millions and millions of years ago. And oh wait, that's the plot of Eternals.
That'd actually be really cool.
Yeah.
So okay, out of all the different trades, oh
Did I forget one? I don't know.
no,
I mean,
what about share all?
well, I mean, because that's the default. Share all is the normal type of trade that I'm talking about. That
Right.
we create a bunch of content and we're going to share the content. Now, what starts to get really, I think, even like more difficult, because it's one thing where it's like, okay, we're going to take 100 photos. I'm going to get 50. You're going to get 50. And for me, I just say, hey, you pick. I'm going to separate them into two piles, and you pick which pile you want. That to me seems very fair. Some people don't want that. They don't even want, and so I'm like, okay, well, here you go. I'm going to give you what I think is half the good ones. But what can also happen is, okay, so I take 10 photos and I say, here you go. Here's all 10 photos. This was the agreement. And then I go through and I edit something and I add a bunch of composites, and now it looks just amazing. It looks like a movie poster. Who owns that movie poster? Now, in my opinion, I own the movie poster. And the reason why I think that's fair is because people will tell me, like Nicole from San Francisco, she asked me just the other day, hey, this artist wants to use some of the footage. I understand if you want to say no. Is he allowed to? Not only is the answer yes, but if the artist wants the raw image, I will give it to him, because that's the kind of TFP I do. We're trading for the photos. I hope that the models I work with make amazing art from those photos, and I will also try to make amazing art from my photos that I was allowed to keep. And I will, by all means, encourage people to share a social media post that I made of the art that I made of them. But I don't feel obligated to give them the raw PSD with all the layers of the image I made. And I don't feel obligated to give them the 50 megapixel version of the movie poster I made. I just don't, because that's, I'm not working for them.
I mean, that's also part of your like creative rights.
Yeah. And again, that's why I encourage the models I work with to do amazing things and collaborate with other artists, because how much cooler is that? Like, in any given shoot, I'm getting 50 to 200 or 300 good images.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't possibly edit most of them. So if there's 10 other artists working on those photos, amazing, good. By all means, I want to see what they can do with it.
So, okay, so we know that you prefer share all because it benefits everyone. There was a time when TFP went wrong. Do you want to talk about that?
Which scenario are you talking about?
The one where I wasn't there. The one where we did
Is it about Byron?
No, Byron was hilarious.
He is hilarious. Yeah.
He cracks me up because he's just signing the thing. And I was like, Byron, so you want exclusives? He's like, what?
Because I have two checkboxes, exclusive or split.
And no, I thought it was exclusive or share. I don't remember.
Okay, it's two checkboxes. Either they're getting half the photos and it's exclusive to them,
Yeah.
or we're sharing all rights on all the photos.
Right.
That's the two options.
So he wasn't reading and he clicked the wrong box. I was like, so how do you want to split up? And he's like, split up. I was like, or did you want all of them? And he was like, I want all of them. We will share the rights. I want all of them.
Yeah.
But the other one where I had to go to work and you guys didn't sign the paperwork first.
Okay. So when should you give them a contract? And the answer is, or I guess the first question is, when should you have a contract? Every single time. If you don't have a contract, you cannot sell the content, you can't publish it to magazines, and you may not agree later on when you go back and say, hey, can you sign this thing because the magazine wants a release form? So sign a contract every single time. If you're a model, yes. If you're a photographer, yes. If the photographer doesn't have one, download one off the internet. Don't write your own, just download one off the internet. Sign one every single time. Okay. So that's when should you have a contract every single time? When should you tell them you need a contract to be signed before you do the TFP, before you show up? That's when you should tell them there has to be a signed contract. When should you give them the contract? Before you show up. If the photographer is going to ask you to sign something, tell them, hey, can I get a copy of it before I show up, if you're the model? In this case, we knew that we were going to sign release forms, and you had to work, and things were hectic, as they often are during a shoot. And it was it was not New Year's Eve, but the week of New Year's Eve. Mm-hmm. And it was so between Christmas, between New Year's Eve, we had checked into a hotel, and I didn't have a computer. I didn't have a printer and things at the hotel. Mm-hmm. So we shot a bunch of content with a brand new couple that we've never worked with, some super, super sexy content in video format.
They were really good.
Yeah, they were really good. And I gave them the contract, and they didn't sign it. They refused to sign it. And so they still wanted to do trade. They were open to trade as long as I didn't monetize it, which I thought was unfair because they had an OnlyFans, and I'm 99.9% sure that they were going to take the video footage I gave them and they were going to share it with their OnlyFans, because to them, they did not feel like selling it on OnlyFans is selling it. To them, putting it on OnlyFans is them getting paid for being them. And they just happen to use my content to convince people to give them money. They're not buying my content per se. I guess they could. I think you can sell individual videos, but in their perspective, they're probably just going to give away the videos as part of the monthly fee. But they weren't going to give me part of their monthly fee, so I had no interest in giving them that content. Mm-hmm. So that content is still sitting on my hard drive. It's still unedited. I refused to look at it. We wasted our afternoon, and I'm never going to give it to them. They have never asked for it because they knew that when they said they would not sign it, that the deal was done, and we both wasted our time. They got good photos. I gave them good photos. I used their photos. But the video footage that we took, which was super sexy, nope. That probably should be deleted, but one day maybe they'll be like, hey, you know what? I just want to see what it's like. You can't see it until you sign, because I won't edit it till I sign it, or till they sign it. So yeah, that's when a case when TFP went wrong. And the reason why it went wrong was because I always feel uncomfortable asking people to sign. I always think, well, if I ask them to sign, what if they don't show up? Good. It is better that they don't show up and you do something else with your afternoon.
Then waste your time.
Yeah, listen to this podcast on an afternoon when people don't show up. It's fine. Like, no, there's always more models to work with. There's always more people to work with. You do not need to work with people who don't want to do what you do. If you want to be paid, wait for people to pay you. You don't need to do trade.
Yeah.
If you want to split trade where you need exclusive content of your own, and there's two models that refuse to do split trade, they want all of it.
New models.
Doesn't matter. it's not, there's nothing wrong with them for not wanting to sign. Nothing. And there's nothing wrong with you for wanting to get paid if that's what you want. There's nothing wrong with you if you want split trade. And there's nothing wrong with you that you want all the content. What's wrong is when people work together that don't want the same thing, but they didn't talk about it beforehand. So at the end of it, they're like, this was amazing. It was so cool. I love working with you. And then it turns out that there's a legal problem because you didn't agree to everything ahead of time. So just talk about it in the beginning, get it over with. And the worst they will say is you have your afternoon back because I'm not showing up. Oh, good. I love having my afternoon back because I can now find somebody else who wants to work the way I like to work.
Yeah, and that's an interesting aspect to think about. I still remember when I did a photo shoot and she wanted exclusives, but I never signed anything. So I never received an email. I never received a text message.
Did she edit the photos?
I don't even know if she edited the photos. So I have photos in limbo that I don't know if anything's going to happen to them. It doesn't bother me either way. I knew ahead of time, how it was going to be, but there was no signatures. So I don't know if she's actually going to do anything with them.
So I think in the bonus cast, I want to talk a bit about what do you do when the photographer does not deliver the photos, because that's a problem in the trade community for sure.
That's a very big problem.
And the nice thing about the bonus cast is that they had to pay to listen to it, so we can be a little bit meaner because that's an asshole move. Like if you made an agreement
and you don't follow through
with it, yeah. So anything else for this podcast before we cut over to the bonus cast?
No. I appreciate you guys listening in. If you have any questions, if you want us to go over anything, if you're curious about something that we can help enlighten you, let us know. Leave a comment, click subscribe, do the things.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.